Hello everyone, welcome to Code with Femi. I hope you guys are doing well. In this video, we're going to be looking at identity in ASP.NET Core MVC Crash Course series. So let's do it. Identity is actually a way for you to secure your actual MVC application. It is actually where you identify the users using your MVC application. So in a scenario where you want the users to log in or to register, you need the identity mechanism for you to be able to achieve this. In the actual MVC application that we've been using for the past videos in this crash course series, you will see right there that we have a section in there which is actually under areas. We can see we have identity, and this is what I'm referring to, and this allows your users to be able to, for instance, register with your application. They can also, you can configure it in a way that they can register with their social login accounts like Facebook, Twitter, or Google or Microsoft. And as well as you can also like set up like two-factor authentication on your MVC application. And the main focus here is just for you guys to really understand how you can implement one, and actually also be able to have the opportunity to customize it based on your actual web application that you're developing. So right here you can actually see that the only thing you can see right currently is just this view start razor page, and this is actually just referencing a layout, and that is all. You'll be wondering like, okay, then so what does this do, and like how do I get started with this? One thing you should bear in mind is that this is the actual pages. So let's actually just run this application so you can see what I'm referring to. I'm gonna run this now. This is the actual application, and as you can see we have this actual register. So if I click on register, you see there that you can allow your users to register, or you can also, they can also log in as well. And another thing is you can also set up like external services, like I mentioned, like social logins. If we click on this actual article, you can see right there that it gives you like the guide for you to install or to set up like your application to use things like Google. You can set it up to use Google, set it up to use Twitter, Microsoft account, Facebook, as you can see there, and your user can actually log in with that. And on the side here you can see that there's different guide as to how you can actually implement this. This is actually like a one easy step guide, so I wouldn't really spend so much time on this. You guys can actually implement this by yourself. I'll just make sure I put the link in my description down below. So let's go back to the actual application. So right here you can see there's actually a login and all of that, but the thing is you don't have access to the actual pages in your code. And the question is, how do you access this page to be able to customize it the way you want to? And the way you can do that is, let's stop the application. You can right click on the actual web project, and on there you can actually go to add. Instead of your add, you just say that you want to add new scaffolded item. So that is what you like click on, and that should bring up a dialog box. On the left pane, just make sure you click in on identity, and then identity, and then you can just say add. And what this is going to do is this is going to scaffold all these different identity components that you can easily just customize and implement based on your preference on or how you want to structure it. As you can see right in front of us, we've got this dialog box that actually shows you all the different components that is part of the identity, and you can choose to select the ones that you want to override, or you can actually just click on that to override all. Another thing is you might want to just select the DB context that you want to use with this actual identity. Okay, but before we actually go into this, there's just one thing I would like to quickly fix. What I would like to quickly fix is, number one, I want to relocate this actual data into the infrastructure, into the infrastructure. And the reason why we want to do that is because I just want to like detach this. Let's detach this and let's move it to left side so that you can see what I'm trying to show you guys. So here you can see that there's a data and I want to move it into the space which is your infrastructure. And you might be asking me, why do you want to do that? The reason why we need to do that is because currently your data is tightly coupled to your web, and this is actually not it's not best practice. And the reason why it's not best practice is because you might find yourself in a scenario where you need to maybe, for instance, you don't want to use entity framework, then you run into a lot of danger in terms of now touching a lot of things within your actual solution. So it's very important to actually just separate your concerns. So for you to actually have more flexibility and have like a much more clean architecture, it is advisable to actually put your data in the right place and just use your core to interface with it, so that when anything is changing within the infrastructure, it's not changing anything within the the core or the actual web. So we're gonna rely on abstraction to make sure that things are actually working as we're expecting. Okay, so let's move this and let's just cut it. I'm gonna say Ctrl X to cut it and then I'm gonna just paste it right into this location. So another thing you will want to do is you might want to let's just clean this out first. And you might be asking me, why are we cleaning that out now? This is actually a migration that we can always regenerate. The reason why I'm cleaning it out is because I want to show you guys how you can create your own migration. I've done this in a previous video, but I would like to show you guys again. But let's remove it from there. And then the other thing that you want to do is we might just want to put in a little bit of a structure here and say under data, I just want to add a new folder and call that EF. Okay, and then all this will move into that space because this is actually related to entity framework. So my migrations, my application DB context is related to entity framework, so I will add that there. So in a scenario where I might want to do something like, let's say I want to do DAPA, I can easily add DAPA as my new ORM. Sorry, I didn't spell that right. DAPA like that, and then I can actually put in anything related to DAPA in there. So you guys get the gist. But for this actual, let's just focus more on entity framework. When your application DB context, you will see there that the namespace is still referencing web data, and what you want to now do is you want to like make sure it conforms to where the actual file is. And if you check here, it's now WebApplication.Infrastructure. Okay, giving us stuff data.ef. So that is where our actual application DB context is now, and that is just what we need to do, and as well as resolve all this broken code. So what we can do is we can actually just see if we can resolve it easily by using the IntelliSense. So we can see that it's telling us that we can just say install with package manager, and that would open up the package manager for us, and then we can easily just get the right version that we're using, because we're currently running MVC 5.0. I'm gonna just select this actual version, which is 5.0.12, and then I will install that. So installing that would actually ensure that the application DB context is now properly resolved. So we can see that is resolved. This actual one is resolved. There's still one that is complaining. Let's use that drop down again, and then we can just install. We can use local. because also remember that we already have those packages within our actual solution from the web application right there. So that should actually just resolve that. And another thing that you might want to just add on top of this is the SQL Server, and we can get that from here. So you can see this is the one we also need to install inside of our infrastructure. So we can go into the NuGet package manager and actually just paste that in there, and that will search it from the nuget.org repo, and then we can install 5.0.12 as well. Let's just check what we've installed so far in our infrastructure. You can see that we have entity framework, we have the SQL Server is in there, and we have all the other ones, which is good, right? So we get in there, we're moving close to it. So now we've relocated this, which is really good. Another thing you want to do is you just want to make sure that your startup class is referencing now the right namespace for the application DB context. Let's just say using, and then you might have some errors to resolve here. Just remove that namespace that is not longer used, and then you want to just build the application just to be sure that everything is still working as expected. Since we've just relocated now, we just have to be sure that okay, everything is still fine. We haven't really caused a lot of issues around in the code. Okay, it's built successfully, which is good. Another thing I want to mention is that in the last video, remember we removed the middleware for the exception handler, and I think that actually we don't necessarily have to remove our middleware, and I want to show you how you can actually ensure that you get your errors when you're actually in development mode. So what you want to do is you want to keep this here, and inside of this place you can actually use directives to be able to ensure that you return whatever you want to return based on what environment you're running, and this actually plays a role. So currently these are the the configurations we've got, which is debug, release, and what you can now do is you can actually just say if debug in caps like that, then you want to just throw the actual exception, right? You don't want to, and then you can actually now say else. So if it's not in a debug environment, if you're not in development mode, then you want to just actually just return a friendly message. You can just say end if. Okay, so this is actually just one simple thing that I want to point out to you guys before we move on. Our middleware is back in, so when it's during debug, if you're still debugging, it's gonna throw that exception as it is so that you can see what the error is, or if not, then it's just gonna return a friendly message if you're in a production environment. So that is fine now. Another thing I would like to resolve here is the actual connection string, and in there inside of the app settings.json, in there you see that we have this default connection string that was provided to us, and this is actually SQL Express, and this is actually something that you can also, if you have SQL Express installed and you have the management studio, you can actually just go straight to it. But for this actual demo, I would like to connect to my local SQL server. So what I just want to do is I'll modify this a little bit. I'm just gonna put my server, which is just gonna be a dot because it's pointing to my local host, and I'm going to just give it a new name and a new DB name and call it identity. Let's call this identity DB DB, yeah, identity DB server, and then I want to pass in a user ID, which is just going to be test, and then my password, which is also just going to be test, because I'm actually running this on a sandbox. So we have that. So now when this runs, it just uses my local my local DB connection. Okay, that's actually sorted now. So let's go back to where we were, which is the actual scaffolding, right? We haven't scaffolded this yet. So we have our application DB context right here now under EF core right there. So what we can now do is we can actually just right click and actually say add scaffolded item again, there, new scaffolded item. Click on identity, add. So we're just going to override all. So you can see that we're just going to override all, but now just going to go to where that DB context is now, which is in WebApplication.Infrastructure.data.ef, and just say add. So that will scaffold the actual components for us, and then we can actually have a look once this is done. As you can see right here, you can see that we've got some new things now showing up. We've got some validation scripts, we've got view import, we've got view start. It's quite amazing, right? And also if you go to expand the account folder, you will see there's a lot in here, which is you've got your your login. So right there, a login page with the actual class. So this is actually Razor page. This is a Razor page, and the way they've structured this is that it's actually using a byte property to actually just bind the inputs to the actual view. Also you have the onGet, which is actually a method that is being called to actually serve the actual view when you go to that, maybe the URL. And then we have the onPost to actually like receive data from the actual view, like from a form. So if I open up the login, you will see that there's actually a form. So when you do post, when you submit this actual form, what happens is that it's going to go straight to this actual method onPost, and then it will do the necessary stuff that it needs to do. So that is actually something straightforward, something simple. And I just want to show you now what I mean. So basically now we have our actual page, right, for the login. For instance, yeah, you can actually just say look, use default. You can just say use default account to login. Okay, and let's run this so you can see what the login page actually looks like now when I touched this actual message. So the actual application is up. If you go to login, there you will see that is actually changed now from what it was initially. So you can also like style this, come up with your CSS and whatever you want to come up with. You can actually do that easily without stressing, if you get what I mean. Like you're not restricted. You can actually just come up with different implementation. Let's say for instance in here you want to add a new field and pass that on, you can actually add it there and do that. So you have no limitation as to what you can do with this, which is really good. Like you can do a lot of stuff here. So you can actually it makes life just easy to to work with that component. But let's actually move on, because we're not actually even anywhere close here to what we want to achieve. But you can see right there that these are all the scaffolded stuff. I don't know, put it right there. Now all the scaffolded stuffs are in there. So the next thing we want to do is we want to put in some users in the DB. And before we do that, let's just stop this. We might want to just create our initial a migration. And how do we do that? We go to tools and then go to NuGet package manager console. That will open up the console for you, and in there you can actually now write the migration command to actually ensure that you generate the initial schema that will be run that will be executed against your actual database. So let's do it. So it's .NET ef migrations add. So we're just gonna call this InitialSchema. Okay, so this actual name here, it's whatever you want to call that migration you're about to run against that DB. So this is actually the InitialSchema description, and then you just want to specify the project. So what you're saying is, where is the migration, what project is handling the migration? The project is this actual project, which is WebApplication.Infrastructure. So let's just say that WebApplication.Infrastructure, right? And then the next thing you want to specify is the startup. The startup project. What project is the startup project, which is this one, web application 3, web application 3. And if you're unsure, just you can check also your startup and see what namespace it's used there, because the startup is at the root of the application. So like that. And then you want to also specify your context. So what context are we using here? Context we're using here is this one, application DB context. But when you specify this, you have to make sure you include the namespace so that it can know where this is. So you just actually do that. And then finally, we just want to say -o. This is just to say this is my output. This is where I want you to put the migration file. So in there, you can actually just put a double quote and actually say data/ef/migrations. And with that, you can actually just click on enter. And what that would do is it would actually just generate the InitialSchema migration for you. And we can have a look at that once this is done. So this is what you're going to see once the migration has been executed successfully. Build started, build successful. And inside migration, you should see some new files, so which will include the actual application DB snapshot and as well as the InitialSchema. Let's open that. And you can see right there, these are the tables we're going to run that's going to be executed against the DB when we do our first migration against the DB. Okay, so you can see that everything is right there. These are the tables that are going to be created, roles, user claims, and all of this, right? So on top of this, another thing that we want to do is we want to create a seed to actually just make sure that our actual database has actually has some some information, some users in it, like maybe like your admin, and as well as, let's just create 2 users actually for now. But where you want to do that is within your, so inside of your program class, you can actually set up like your seed your seeding operation. Well, before we do that, let's just actually create a folder in here and actually call it seeding. So in there, you're just going to create a folder, call it seeding, and inside of the seeding folder, we can actually just create a new class, and this new class we can actually just call it user identity seed, user identity seed. Then once you have that seed specified there, let's just make this public, because we're going to call this class from the actual web application project. And in here, you just want to make sure that you have like a public, let's just make it a static void, and just call it seed. And then we just want to pass in an application DB context, and as well as we want to just make sure that we have like a password that we want to use to create the actual users for this. Okay, so the next thing we want to do in this seed class is to actually just create the necessary users that are going to be used for accessing things in our actual application. And how we're going to do that is we're going to just set up the the roles, and then as well as the user, and also link the users to the actual role. Okay, so what we want to do now is I'm just going to, there's actually a code I've actually prepped for this just to save us time. So the actual code is this, which is just going to create a user for us, passing in so you have to pass in a context, the email, password, and then the role. Okay, so we have it, and I can go through it with you guys now, which is basically, it's gonna set up an identity user object, and then it's going to use the role store to actually like instantiate a role store that will be used to create the actual identity role. You can see there, so we create the identity role if there's no roles for that specific role, and then the next thing we do is we actually generate a hash for that password. So hash is so this is going to be plain text. This is going to be converted to a text that cannot be understood, and also you cannot reverse it. It's not like your encryption decryption. Once you hash it, it gives you this set of characters, and this is just a way of preventing anyone from seeing what your real password is. Let's say for instance the DB gets stolen, but it can never be reversed once it's hashed. So that's what we store for the user, the password hash, and then the user is created, and then the user is linked to that role. So the usage for this is just going to be in here, where we're just going to say create. So because we want to create two users, right, we're just going to make sure that this is also a static method. Let's just say create user async, and sorry, let's just copy that, and then we can actually just say context. We pass in the context, we pass in the email, which is going to be the first one we want to create is an admin, right? In.com, just here admin@.com, and then we actually pass in the password, and this password is going to be set up in our application settings, and this is because we don't want any password to be in our code. We don't want anyone seeing what the password we used for setting up this user is. But once the users are there, also one of the things is you can actually go in there, log in, and change their password to whatever you want to change it to. But the first level of security is to make sure that you don't store any secret within your actual application or code, because when you push this into like your source control, you don't want people seeing what the password is. So it's best to just pass it in like this. And then we have the role, which is going to be an admin role. Okay, so this is going to be an admin role, admin. But for us to actually make sure that we don't keep on add coding that actual role, we can actually just add that role in our core. So within our core, we can actually just have a class in there. We can just create a folder right there and actually call this folder, let's just call it constants. Okay, constants. And inside of the constants, we can just say class, and right there we can actually create row constants. Okay, and inside of our row constants, we can actually make that public, and then we can actually set up the actual public constant string. So we call this one admin. Okay, and in there we can just make it admin. Then the next one we want to do is we can actually just call this like a reader role. Okay, something of this nature. So you have that covered now, and then we can actually go back to our user identity seed, and then instead of hard coding it there, we can actually just use the row constant that we created, dot admin. Okay, call this reader, and this will just be reader, yeah, like that. Then you can see that is result for us, but it's still complaining, and this is because this is actually an asynchronous method. So to actually make it synchronous, you can just say get a waiter, and then get results. Okay, so copy that, pass that on, then we're actually happy again. So we've got our seed class to actually create our users, but now we need to actually make sure that this actual seed class is actually called before the application executes. Just have to ensure that it actually executes before this, and this is because it might go into concurrency issue if you try to do it within the execution of your app. Just avoid that. So what you want to do is you want to do it in between, after the build and before the run. Okay, so what we can do is we can actually create a method to return web host. Just make sure it's a static method. Okay, and then we can actually just say seed and just pass in our web host. Okay, And in here we just want to make sure that we return host. Okay, it's fine. Then on top here you just want to do a using to make sure that we have a scope, and this scope is going to be used to just get the service, the application DB context that we can use to pass down into the actual C class. Then we can actually just say host dot services dot create scope. Okay, you would have to resolve this. This actually belongs to the dependency injection mechanism. Just resolve that, and in there you can actually just say context, which will be equals to scope dot service provider dot get service. So the service we want to get is application DB context. Okay, right there. As you can see, we're just gonna have to resolve this actual service. Okay, let's resolve that, and everything else should be fine. So that's your context there, and then you can easily just call your this actual class like that. You say dot seed. We just have to resolve that as well. Okay, then we'll pass in the context. But wait a minute, what about the password, right? You'll be wondering, like, how do we get the password in here? This is actually one trick I'll show you guys now. So you have to go into your actual startup class, and basically what we want to do is we want to add a new setting. So we're just gonna call this your seed setting, right? Let's call this seed settings. Okay, seed settings, and inside of seed settings this is gonna be a public class, and then we just want to create just a simple property in here. This can be used for, you know, when you have multiple things going on, but for now we just want to have this password, right? So you have your seed setting, right? And then inside of your application you just want to like set up something here for seed setting. Actually, you have your password, which is going to be an empty string currently. So now this is where you would be wondering, how do we now, you know, go on from here? So remember, like how we did it for the other one where we actually configured this section. So we do the same thing for, you know, seed settings. Okay, and then we have seed setting, seed setting. We have seed setting there. In your program we actually just also resolve your seed setting option. Okay, and then we can actually just say I options, then say seed settings, and we have to resolve this. Resolve that, and I think we have to resolve this as well. Okay, so we get that those two services, and then we can just say for this one c dot value dot password. So here you have it like that, and then so this is actually what the code looks like. But for password, basically we're just saying it's blank here. We have not passed in anything yet, right? And this is where you use something, and I'm going to show you that now. Before we actually move on, just pay attention. You can see that there's something it's complaining about, so we're missing the comma there. Just make sure this is actually a valid JSON, because if it's not valid, then you're gonna have a problem when you run the application. So we fixed that now. That should be fine. And the next thing I want to do is I just want to show you something on this actual documentation. In actual fact, when you are actually dealing with app secrets, you can actually store it locally on your on your computer or on your laptop or your machine. And this is the guide to actually show you that. I'm gonna put a description down below just for you to be able to see this and read through it, but I'm gonna also show you how to use it. But basically it actually helps you to create secrets that is stored in on your physically on your machine. On Windows this is the path, and on Linux and Mac OS that's the path. And what happens is that you can enable the the secret storage by running this command, and you can see that would update the that user secret ID in your actual project as your CS project. So this is how you set a key and a value that you want to use. Okay, and also for this is where you have multiple projects that you're dealing with. You have to just specify what project you actually want to run that actual command against. But I'm just going to copy this because this is similar to us, because we have multiple projects. We're dealing with multiple projects. So what we want to do now is we want to go to package manager, and then we want to paste that in. So seed settings is the key, the top key. So we're just going to make sure that is there, seed settings, and then the next thing is the password. Okay, and then the value of the password can be anything. I'm just going to use test for this example, and then we just make sure that that is the project, because that's the project we're targeting, web application 3. Okay, and we press enter. So this will actually just create a new key that and value that can be used when we run the app. So instead of it returning blank to us, it's gonna return test to us, because it's gonna read that from the secrets.json file that is already on our machine. Okay, so we've done that. We're happy. Don't forget to do that part, because it's quite crucial. Okay, so what we want to do is we just want to put a breakpoint here. Put a breakpoint just to see what the password is at this point. Okay, and then also I just want to go back to the program and actually just hook this up so that it can call the seed method. So what we want to do is we want to split this up and just say host equals to that, and then we first build, and after we build, then we call seed dot host. Okay, so this is what we need to do. Okay, it's showing errors. Okay, so it seems like they've changed from iWebhost to iHost, so we can actually just do the same. Just remove all of that iWeb, and everything should be good in the pack. So you have iHost. Okay, then this should be fine. So the application will build. After building, it will seed, and then after seeding, it will run. Okay, that's the actual sequence. So let's run this and actually see it in action. As you can see right there, the breakpoint is it, and let's see what the password is. You can see, amazing, the password is now test, which is nice and beautiful. And also it actually helps you, because now you don't have to worry about pushing in secret code into your your source control, like your GitHub or whatever source control you're using, like Bitbucket. You don't have to push it there. It's actually blank. Nobody knows what your password is. You can set one for your local, you can set a different one for your dev, you can set a different for your QA. Like, it makes it flexible for you. So I think this is actually a big win for me in terms of using the secret storage for your local development. So right there you can see that we're not showing any password, but although at runtime we're getting the password, right, which is nice. So let's see what happens. But before we actually go on and create this user, I just want to see what is currently what we have in the DB. So we don't have any database yet, because I was expecting to see some sort of like an identity DB database, but we don't have that yet. So let's see what is going to happen when we try to do this. Okay, so it's telling us that there is actually some errors, and this is because maybe the DB is not created yet. And this is one thing that also you have to bear in mind, that there are cases where the DB is not created and it might actually just not run. Okay, and also what you can also do is, in terms of even your seeding, you can actually say context, okay, dot ensure. So we can actually say Let's see if we can get it. Ensure created. So this is the one I was looking for, which is context database ensure created. So this will ensure that the database is created before it executes this. But I was also expecting that our migration actually gets executed against the DB, which is this one. So let's run it again and see what happens. So you can see right there the breakpoint is it, and then password is still saying test, right? So let's actually just step over. So now it's going to step over this line to ensure that the database is created. So I want to believe after this line is executed, we should have a database, we should have all the necessary, tables in there, even though they're going to be blank. So I'm just going to refresh this. So there you can see we have identity DB. Let's open up table. Inside of tables, I want to believe all of this should be null, right? There shouldn't be any records in there. They should all be empty, like empty. Okay, that. So you can see right there we have empty, right? So we are actually on this line, which is where it's gonna about to create the admin. So let's step over that line. Okay, let's go back into the DB and run execute. Let's just see what, yeah, so you see data is coming now. Okay, there's no row yet. Interesting. So we've got a user. So let's move on to the next one. Let's execute this. We should have two users now. You can see we have admin and reader. And then what else do we have here? We have just one connection. Yeah, should have two. Yeah, so there's still something not right here. So that means that something is not persisting yet, and this is where you just have to like ensure that all the necessary things are persistent, because as far as I can tell, the actual bridge table between user and role is only providing one link. There should be two records here because we have two rows. So the only thing is creating this one is just for the admin. So that means that it's not persistent. So in this scenario, I think we might just have to context.save changes at the end here, and that would actually just make sure that everything is persisted into the DB. So let's stop this. Just gonna stop this, and then what I'm going to do is I want to go back here and just delete that database because I can't do that. So once you can delete the entire database, and you'll be like, it's deleting database. Yeah, I can delete it, and then the actual application is gonna recreate it again. So let's run it again and actually see. And this is how you test and be sure that your actual seed, your migration, everything is working before you actually start thinking of promoting your code to any other environment. Make sure you test properly locally, because that is key to you developing a quality software. Okay, you can't just develop code without testing it. You need to also learn to be able to test your code, ensure that it's doing what you're expecting it to do before you progress with it to the next environment. So let's see what we have now. The breakpoint should be hit anytime now. From now, come on, do it. Okay, yeah, here we go. So you can see that the actual breakpoint is here now. So create DB, it's gonna create a DB, do the necessary migration if there's any, then it's gonna move to the next line of code, which is that one. You can see right there, admin. Let's go check now what we have. So we've deleted it. Let's refresh this. See, the DB is back again. Like, don't you love that? I'm sure you love that. Then everything is there. Just gonna open up the actual one that is giving problems, which is this one, ASP.NET user rows. And then I'm going to just continue to the next user. There should be one. Hasn't created it yet, which is fine because we have a save changes here. There should be one now though. Okay, there's one. and then we can just actually like make sure that the context actually saves the changes into DB. So there should be 2, you can see there. So we have 2 records in there. Or ASP net roles as well should be 2. It's perfect. And then we have 2 users. Perfecto. Right? And this is how we've actually now finally gotten ourselves to a space where we have users in the DB. I'm gonna close this actually. Sorry, just close this. So we have 2 users in the DB. We already see that we already have 2 users in the DB. So the next approach is to actually now create guards around our actual code, about, and just for testing sake. Okay, so now what we can now do is we can actually just add built-in filters into our different controllers and controller actions wherever we want to actually. But for this example, I'm just going to say that, let's say authorize. Okay, and authorize, we have to just resolve that. So with authorize, this one will just allow any role to come in here, because you didn't specify what role that is allowed in here. But for this, let's just actually just say roles, and for our role we just want role, what's that, .admin. Let's say admin is the only one allowed to this actual controller, everything that has to do with this controller, right? And also one thing we can also do is that we can create another controller. Let's just create it from about, just to be quick. Then we just actually just rename that to reader. Okay, and then for reader we're just gonna make sure that we rename that accordingly, reader. Okay, so we have a reader controller now, and for this reader controller we just want that to be the readers. They are the only ones that will have access to this. Okay, and then let's now set up another thing in here in the home. So sorry, I think we just have to resolve all of this. So in the home page, I'm just gonna split it so you can actually just see how deep you can actually control everything within your application. So in your view, you can also, whatever it is, you can actually set up authorization everywhere. So, and I'm gonna show you now. So inside of your index, you remember we have this blog list, right? So what I can now do is I can actually say that the only person I want to see this is the user dot is in row. When I can now say row constant dot admin. Okay, that means that the only person that would be able to see this actual blog list on the home page will only be admin. Anyone else will not be able to. Okay, let's save all of this. I think this is not resolved yet, because it's actually not, I don't want to believe so, because there's no namespace yet. So yeah, it's actually telling us to use this, right? So you can see there that I've actually like now put in a use in here. So your views as well takes using, which is perfect, isn't it? But now check here. One of the things I haven't mentioned is this. You can actually put all your using in this view imports.css.html. You can see right there. If I put the actual using right here, I don't have to always, repeat myself anywhere in any of the views. I just put it in a one central location, and it should reflect any view I create wherever it is within the views folder. Okay, so let's go back to our home page. You will see that it's still resolving, right? Which is perfect. Isn't that beautiful? So we have that now. You can see. So we've set up some some restrictions here where we say admin can only see this, and then for for what do you call it, so for reader, we haven't actually set up a reader view. Let's just set up a reader view quickly. Just gonna create a reader. Then we can actually just copy this actually and just put it here, and actually just or did we copy it correctly? Let's copy that and paste that in there. Okay, so inside of this place we can actually just say reader's page. Also, I don't want to inject any more though. I'm gonna take that off. So I don't need that. just page, and as well as I don't want to see blog list. I just want to like make it simple, straight to the point, so that you guys can get the concept. And we can take this out from our reader controller, because readers don't have models. The actual reader index page is not expecting any model, and that's why I'm taking it out from the actual controller. So just bear that in mind. And also this has to say reader, right? So we have the controller for reader, we have the actual view for the reader, and also we have home controller that will run normally, but based on who you are. So if you just anonymous and all of that, you would actually you would actually see this, but you won't see this blog list. Okay, but let's run this actually, so that we can actually see this in action. Well, this seed breakpoint is still it. I can actually just remove that and actually just continue, and let's see what we see on the actual pages, because based on what we're expecting to see the to see this page, because we didn't put any filter here, so anyone can still access this page, but it's just that in the view you're not allowed to see that unless you're an admin. Okay, so in there we can see that we can't see that actual page, right? But let's actually log in as an admin. Okay, we have that already there. Just gonna admin at admin.com, and then the password is test. Let's just, don't worry, let's just continue. Let's go to about. Oops, okay, in access denied. I was expecting to see the blog, so this is where we actually troubleshoot this to just see what is going on. Just gonna put a breakpoint there. Let's see if I can put a breakpoint here. It's not gonna let me. Okay, which is fine. I think it should be fine. Let's just refresh this and actually see what's going on. Okay, it's not stepping into this block for some reason. So let's check the user itself. We can also access the claims here just to see what is in there. We've got claims. Yeah, I've only got this 5 claims. I can't see anything that tells me the actual roles. But I can see here it says the role claim type is there. So that there, role claims. Okay, there's a role there, but I'm not entirely sure what's going on. So what I'm gonna do is let's just, I think there's actually a fix for this. So that means that maybe the role is not loaded. So what you can do is you can actually go into the startup, okay, and actually just ensure that you add in your roles to this actual setup here. To say that dot add roles, and then we can actually just say what did we call it in our seed? So it's called identity role. That's all we need. We need identity role, so we can actually just add that as part of our startup, just to make sure that the rows are coming in. So let's actually just reload this and actually see now if we can get some rows showing up in our actual user context. Oh, the breakpoint is 8, and you can see right there that we've got that coming in. So let's actually check what our user looks like now, if we've got some rows in there in our claims. Telling me the claims is 0. That's strange. Okay, we have claims. Okay, we've got claims now. Oops, yeah, still 0. No, okay, let's go on. Okay, we're not logged in yet, so let's log in. Seems the context, we don't have anything in the actual context yet because we're not logged in, which makes sense. So we should have something in our claims now. Identities 0. Okay, we've got 6 now before we had 5, remember, as you can see right there. So now this is what I want to do. You can actually use the watch so we can actually see what is actually in the user. Enter the watch there and see claims, and inside of the claims, let me see if I can, okay, I can't zoom this, but you can see right there now the actual role is actually coming into the claims, which is amazing, so now which means that when I say continue now, it's gonna step into that block, and which means that you're gonna have to see the blog list. Can you see that? Isn't this amazing? If I go to about, I should be able to see the about us as an admin now. You can see an admin, I can see all of these pages, right? So one thing I just want to do is I want to just include the actual reader in the menu, because we don't have that in the menu yet. So I'm just gonna quickly do that. Just put that in the menu as well to say that we have a reader now. Okay, and I'm just gonna say reader. I'm gonna say reader. Okay, let's just change this to admin. So say admin for now. Okay, then you can just refresh this. Hopefully if that will work, and if not, we might just have to stop the application. I think my Visual Studio is quite buggy, so which is fine. So let's just stop this actually, and then we can actually just run it again. The breakpoint is 8 again, and let's actually continue. Should actually have to log in again. Same story, admin test. We log in, and what we would see is we can just take this out because we already know that this actually works. We can actually just continue. We have this, right? Let's close that. It's just complaining about the weak password we're using, which is fine for we just testing here. So we have admin, so I can actually access my admin page. But if I try to go to reader, what do you think is going to happen? Access denied. You can see right there, because on the actual reader controller, we've said that the only person that can actually see this is actually a reader. Okay, so just bear that in mind, that that thing actually works. This is just to show you that it really works. And finally, if we actually just use the other user, which is the reader at reader.com, I'm just going to use that as my new user. I'm going to log out now, and then try login. I'm putting that as my user and my email. Then you can see I'm logged in now, right? Just remove that, and then you can see I can still see the home page, but now for a reader I can't see the blog list at the bottom here. And if I try to go to the admin, what do I get? Access denied, because that is not, I don't have rights as a reader to see the about controller, because the admin actually sees access to that. And if I try to go to the reader, guess what? I'm in there, and let's just see. It seems something is broken here. Okay, I think when I was like cleaning this up, I actually just but you can see right there that this is actually reader's page, about page, and actually covers it. Like, this is quite amazing as to what you can really achieve with now being able to understand how authorization works, how you can actually like protect users from seeing different things on your MVC application. And I hope this actually helps a lot. In the actual final video that we're gonna be covering, which is the final one for this crash course, is actually the unit test. And also what I was trying to do is I'm just trying to also ensure that we set up like maybe a unit of work or a generic repository as part of that unit test, just to get that in place for our our DB connection and all of that, and DB interaction as well. we'll do that in that video. Just do like a repository pattern, unit of work pattern, just to separate things a little bit more and make it all loosely coupled, and then we can actually just yeah, enjoy the moment. I hope you guys would be fine, and also I hope to see you in my next video. Keep well.